an ironic media production.
Visit us at ironickmedia.com.
It made me think during your story how important education and awareness is about CMT, because people don't know what it is. And the fact that you developed a presentation, if I recall, was that where you had also like socks on your hand? You gave all your participants socks and said, okay, now try buttoning up your shirt with these socks on your hands, right? And that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, because some of the kids were like, I can't do it. This isn't fair. I can't do it. And one little boy, like in third grade, when you can't button up your shirt, you start crying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not the point. That's not the purpose of this. Then we kind of talked about it and said, this is the frustration that somebody feels with CMT or with a difference or different abilities. Just buttoning up that shirt. Let's go. This is coming. You got to get out the door, tie the shoes, do this, do that. So it was very, very powerful.
Hey, everybody. Chris and Lizzo coming at you.
Coming at you.
Here we are doing our podcast, CMT for Me. And I'm here in Vermont, and Lizzo is out there in California. How you doing, Lizzo?
Oh, my gosh. I had such a great trip to Vermont. I just got back. But you know what happened?
What?
In the plane, I got some virus, and I've been sitting here for the last week, coughing and having a headache, sore throat. I had such a good time in Vermont, and now I'm sitting here and I can't go out like walking or anything. I just don't feel well. I mean, this is the first day I feel halfway human. Wow. What have you been doing?
Well, I had an interesting thought this morning after I went for my bike ride, and this kind of ties into our podcast. It's so easy for me to jump on my bike and go for a beautiful ride in Vermont. And as I was riding today, I thought about those with CMT, specifically our next individual on this podcast who we're going to interview. And at times you really do take for granted what you can do. I don't have CMT, and it really made me think about those that do.
I was thinking the same exact thing. I'm here complaining because I can't walk around the neighborhood. Some people can't do that every day,
right? Every
single day. So who do we got here?
Well, I'll tell you, our next guest, I am so excited to interview him, is Yohan Bouchard, my nephew. And I could say a lot about him, but I'm going to hand it over to him, and he can give us a lot of information, his age, where he lives, what type of CMT he has, et cetera, et cetera. And don't forget, he is a Chinese samurai.
Oh boy, Chris, I tried to fix that mistake of yours for years. It's Japanese, okay?
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll get it eventually.
But you know what? He's a warrior. He's a CMT warrior.
So, Yohan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, no problem. So, I'm 28. I'm in California, sunny California. It's nice and warm here right now. Not humid, thankfully. I've been chilling at home now that COVID's been kind of slowly going away. And hopefully soon we'll all be outside without masks, talk to each other. And it's been nice here.
Great. And so on the side, you've been living with your parents. That must be really challenging.
Yeah, it's really challenging in this big house in nice California, and has a couple of cats, a free meal. But you have some exciting news, Yohan.
Yes, I'm starting a new job on Monday, so I'm very excited about that. And then I also recently recovered from a broken fibula that I had. Ooh. So I'm finally back on my own feet again after 2 months of waiting around. So two things are very exciting that have been going on recently.
And Yohan, I want to go back to the beginning, but just tell us, how did you break your fibula?
It's a fibula. It's a fibula. There's a tibia and a fibula. I know. It's like all these medical terms.
I know. How did you break that bone?
I did it while doing extreme mountain biking.
Really?
I did a nice fall off of my mountain bike and smashed it against the frame, and crack. It went. So yeah, risk of going outside and having some fun activities with your dad and friends is, you can fall and hurt yourself, but just recover, you get back on, and you keep going.
Now, I have to ask, is biking relatively new for you, especially with CMT?
Actually, biking is extremely new in the last, I would say 2 years, actually, is when I first got on a normal bike. And then it's only been about since December that I've really been getting big on the mountain biking, which was kind of a scary prospect at first, going off of the nice flat roads onto uneven rocky surfaces. But it's been a lot of fun, and this is the first time I've actually hurt myself, and it's not even that bad. So I'm looking forward to getting back out there.
You know, you say it's a new endeavor, which it is, and you've been doing so well. But so they come home, show me this film, right? And I'm looking, Yohan's cruising down this path. Then all of a sudden, he falls down an embankment. I'm like, what the heck are you guys doing? And then he did it again. Boop, Yohan's there. Then he's not. He's like down in an embankment. So he said this is the first time he's really hurt himself. He didn't hurt himself before, but oh my gosh. I mean, I hope you don't keep doing that. We don't need you falling down embankments into the roots.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you though, if I was there, I would be laughing so hard if I was biking with him, and maybe even give him a little nudge to go off that cliff there.
And you wonder why I don't ride with you, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
big surprise.
So, Yohan, I want to start and go back to when you were just a little baby over in France. Where were you born? Tell us about that life.
Well, seeing as how I moved to the United States when I was 2.5, I don't have the greatest recollection, Chris, of my time in France. But yes, I was born in Grenoble, France. My parents were doing stuff there. My dad had a job and my mom had one too. And then we moved over to California, and that's kind of where I start remembering a lot more of my childhood is over here. It starts really from there. You know, France is a place I used to visit a lot when I was younger, and I still do, but it's not something I remember when I was as a kid, except a little bit, very, very, very little.
Yeah. Okay. And I remember visiting over in Grenoble when you were just a wee little lad over there.
But he was still a wee little lad when he came here to California.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true. Can we talk a little bit about just what type of CMT you have? And very interested in terms of when you were diagnosed. You know, I'm trying to remember as well when you used to come to Vermont and spend some of the summers here. And I do recall maybe some difficulty walking, but at that point, I don't think we even knew that you had CMT. So I'm just going to hand it over. Give us the background there, Yo.
Right. I have CMT1A, which is the most common form of CMT, which I'm very lucky in that respect, is that it's probably the most understood type of CMT that there is. The effects I had as a kid was pretty minimal when I was very young, but it was obvious signs such as I was walking on my toes a lot is the most obvious symptom I had. Very tight muscles. One of the biggest things is I used to trip a lot when I was younger, a lot, especially in 3rd, 4th grade. I used to fall all the time. Like every week I would have giant bloody scrapes all over my knees.
Those didn't come from sword fights.
No. That was just me face planting. That was before I took the Warriors road.
Nice.
But I was diagnosed when I was around 7.5, 7-ish. And it was by this random doctor who just thought of it off the top of his head. I got a blood test. Back then it seemed to be a lot easier to do that, cheaper as well. And we learned that I had this thing called CMT, which was kind of a shock to everyone. They're like, what is this? No one had heard of it. It was kind of an unknown. Even the doctors kind of were like, we're not sure if it's actually that. But it was only after the blood test came back with, positive, you have CMT1A, which if I hadn't had CMT1A, it may not have come back positive. I may have had to be diagnosed incorrectly again, which had happened when I was younger. So it was really when I was around 7 that I actually learned. Do
you remember getting that diagnosis? Like sitting there with the doctor and being like, do you remember that part?
I actually don't really remember. I remember the doctor, but I don't remember that time when they were like, you have CMT, because I'm pretty sure I was young enough where I didn't care, or it didn't really translate. I just don't remember that specific, like, you have CMT. I'm sure my parents do, but I don't.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask, I want to go straight to Lizzo, because as a parent, I'm sure she can recall every single detail of that meeting. Lizzo, tell us more. Tell our listeners more.
CMT is not in our family. So we had no indication of what Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease is, right? So when he was diagnosed, he doesn't remember because he was not there when he was diagnosed. The neurologist called me and said he has this thing called CMT. And we were dumbfounded. So the question is, do you tell him? or do you not tell him?
Oh,
and
yeah.
so there was a lot of discussion around that. And we decided to be very upfront with Yohan and discuss it with him little by little and gradually tell him he had CMT. We wanted to make sure that, that he kept doing the things that kids do and he didn't feel bad about it. And he went to the maximum of what he could do and what he liked to do. So, Yohan, do you remember a little bit about that?
I remember very well how, you guys learned about my diagnosis. You still try to push me to do everything. Similarly, I mean, nothing really changed is what I should say. It's not like you guys got all careful and put carpet everywhere and got me in a wheelchair or anything. No, it wasn't a big change for my life. It's just, I think we kind of knew what was going on, why certain things were happening the way they were.
Listen, I just had an idea which we could have thought about at this time when you were tripping. You know those big like samurai blow-up suits that people wear? We should have sent you to school in those. You'd be totally protected, dude.
Yeah, and I'm sure awesome. Socially I would be very popular. Right. Obviously, that would go so well.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we will get to the social piece, but I just want to take one more minute and really dive into this detail. Here's what I'm thinking. If I was Lizzo or your father's Jill, and I need to sit with my child and explain what they have, what a challenge. I mean, Lizzo, how did you explain that? Did you state there is no cure? This is progressive. I mean, how do you do it? I would need a lot of coaching on that.
Well, there wasn't a lot of coaching that we had. So we just kind of, I think we mentioned Charcot-Marie-Tooth, but at the same time, Yohan was having a lot of problems at school because I don't know if you remember, Yohan, but it was hard for you to keep up with the other kids. Like, I think like the monkey bars, right? That was your nemesis. You couldn't do the monkey bars. And so we said, well, that's because your hands are weaker. So we progressively kind of told him. And as he was not able to do some of the things that kids could do, we wanted to fill him with self-esteem and let him know that he could do other things. So I really credit Gilles for doing this. He brought him camping. He brought him horseback riding, bowling, archery, did a lot of the things he loved to do. I just remember getting some of those pictures back from those camping trips, and Yohan would be standing on a log over like a dry riverbed. And I'm like, what the heck are you guys doing? He's going to get killed, because people with CMT have balance issues. But I think Yohan had really good memories from those times.
Some of the best times I had when I was a kid was out on those camping trips. A lot of fun out in the woods, running around, doing silly things. It was a lot. Great times. Good.
Well, for all the parents out there listening, some great advice from Lizzo. Because I know myself, if I had to do it, I'd be in a corner crying, I can't talk. I don't know how to do this.
That's the way you are anyway.
I know. I'm just emotional. There's no way I could do it. I would have called you, Lizzo, to do it. So
right. And one of the things, doctors, they mean well, but sometimes they say things that are kind of silly. Yeah. Like when we didn't know he had CMT, they're like, give him a quarter for every time he puts his heels down on the floor, because he walked on his toes and he wasn't able to. So you're asking a child to like walk around and put heel toe when he can't do it. And so he didn't earn very much from that.
Right.
I earned nothing from that, actually.
No.
I don't remember making any money out of that.
So I'd like to spend a little time on the social piece, Yohan. And again, I'm thinking, at that age, you're in grade school, or as you progress on to high school. I think you went to high school, right? I don't know if you made it from 8th grade.
Barely.
I believe so.
Just
barely made it.
Yeah,
okay.
Very funny.
Anyways,
funny.
I do know you graduated from college, and you can tell us most about that, and have a master's, which is impressive. However, what is that like? Because I just remember going to school and you're trying to fit in. You're trying to meet new people. You're doing things to really kind of stand out. Did you have situations? Was that challenging? If you lost your balance, did you have people laughing at you, or were there people you just wanted to like beat up every day because they were giving you a hard time? I mean, how do you do that?
Now, I don't really promote violence, so I'm going to go a different way than you on that, other than my enemies. But yeah, socially, when I was pretty young, it didn't affect me enough that I had issues like in kindergarten and things like that. But once I started going to this public school, an American English public school, because I'd been French American school up to then, and I don't have a lot of memories of my CMT really having problems there. I did run into some issues. So I was exempt from something called the mile, which is this American thing where you run around in a mile every day for PE, which always confounded me a little bit. But I didn't have to do that because it was hard for me. And some kids didn't really have the maturity to understand. Some people have issues. They can't do everything I can. And, they didn't understand. They felt like I was taking advantage of a system or something along those lines. And so, I ran into some issues with a little bit of bullying when I was in, say, third grade, probably.
Okay, give me the name of that bully.
He's already gone. Don't worry, I destroyed him. No, it's actually a really good story because what happened was I was having issues being called lazy and things along those lines because I didn't do the same level of activity some of these other more able kids at the time could do. And so what happened actually was my mom came in, and after talking to her about this, not wanting to get super embarrassed or anything, she actually did a really amazing presentation about CMT that kind of was so interactive and kind of fun that the kids were really participating in it. And it helped them in simple ways understand how it affects me in my daily life. And I actually ended up getting an apology from that bully for his actions, and which is a pretty amazing thing from a third grader, if you think back on it, because that doesn't happen a lot. And things worked out pretty well after that. I had a good friend group. I think that's one of the most important things, is get a couple really good friends that can back you up if you ever get into any situations that aren't as great, and move from there. And really, it's all about being open about explaining this to them in a way that they can understand at that age level, which is challenging as a kid yourself. You can't do that because you want to be accepted. But as a parent, my mom did something that was really amazing, and that she helped with this. It wasn't even super complicated. I mean, it was complicated to set up. I remember helping her with it, shoving wires in this tube. It took like 3 days. Oh, it was terrible. But once everything was together, she could do it as many times as she wanted. And we'd have a video of it from when I was in 5th grade, which was at another school I went to, which really helped those kids kind of be like, oh, that's why this is that, like that, those lines.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say, Yohan, thank you for thanking me for doing those presentations. But he had some extra cushions for his back, and then he had a PT coming in. So the kids perceived him as different. They're like, why does Yohan get a cushion in his back?
Right.
And why does Yohan get a cushion for his seat? And why does Yohan get that thing to put his feet up on? And these were like props for helping him with occupational therapy and physical therapy. And the other kids wanted it too. So it made him stand out, not in a good way, but in a bad way. So when we talked about it, I really appreciate that Yohan was very open to me going into the classroom. And I think we have this video on the Charcot-Marie-Tooth Association site, CMTA, teaching kids about CMT. And we did have a lot of props, involved the kids, involved Yohan, showed what a nerve was, show how you run up and down the nerve. And people with CMT, the nerves don't work so well. And it was a whole program, pretty easy to implement. And some kids later on, they even went and did their own presentation, other kids with CMT. So Yohan accepted that. And really, the change was palpable. The kids understood that they didn't want to sympathize. Oh, poor Yohan. Oh, we can't do this. We can't do that. But to empathize with him. Oh, you can't do that, buddy. I'll give you my hand and I'll help you over here. So I think that was a win-win in all situations. It really did help Yohan be accepted.
Yeah. And that's awesome. It just made me think. I know that this podcast today was directed at Yohan, but it's really Lizzo and Yohan, because we bring to our listeners, the viewpoint of a parent. And that is just amazing, right? And it made me think during your story is, again, how important education and awareness is about CMT, because people don't know what it is. And the fact that you developed a presentation, if I recall, was that where you had also like socks on your hand? You gave all your participants socks and said, okay, now try buttoning up your shirt with these socks on your hands, right? And that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, because some of the kids were like, I can't do it. This isn't fair. I can't do it. And one little boy, like in 3rd grade, when you can't button up your shirt, you start crying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not the point. That's not the purpose of this. Yeah. But, it just, then we kind of talked about it and said, this is the frustration that somebody feels with CMT or with a difference or different abilities. Just buttoning up that shirt. Let's go. This is coming. You got to get out the door, tie the shoes, do this, do that. So it was very, very powerful. Yeah.
That's excellent. So, Yohan, are you 28 now?
Yes, I'm 28.
You're 28.
Good job keeping.
I always forget. So you enter high school, you go on to college, and some questions I have, again, that I know CMT is progressive. So I'm curious what type of symptoms you had back then has your CMT progressed? What are your symptoms today? And just what's the evolution of that?
It's a good question. So when I was younger, I had a lot of
all of my questions are good questions. Okay. So thank you.
Debatable, but all right. There's a couple ways it's changed over the years. So when I was younger, it was more muscle cramps, my foot, toe walking, things along those lines before we knew a lot of what was going on. And then after that, it was more tight muscles, which is still very true today. My hamstrings, I can't do the splits. I'd probably kill myself if I tried to do the splits, that type of stuff. I mean, I don't think
we don't want that to happen
either, but I don't think anyone, I'm sure. I'll make you do that on video next time I see you.
Okay, no problem.
My hands have been not severely affected up until, I was in grade school and further, but I noticed, in high school that I have a light tremor, very, very minor tremor, or that I have some weakness in my thumbs. Nothing that makes it super hard to write or anything, but I definitely have issues with fatigue, which is one of the biggest things I've noticed a changeover is I have a lot of issues with being tired all the time. And I mean, it's a pain, but you deal with it. You sleep a little more, you drink some more caffeine.
I noticed you've been drinking a lot of Red Bulls, but anyways.
I don't drink Red Bull. I don't drink energy drinks. Those aren't good for you. You should know better than that.
You can open up to our listeners.
I drink green tea and chai tea. That's about
exactly.
it.
That's what samurais drink.
Yeah, samurais drink green tea. Green tea, right?
What's that, Lizzo?
Yohan would fall asleep. I don't know if you remember in high school, you were so tired all the time. And so we did bring him to the doctor, and something that's really helped him with his fatigue is a medication called Nuvigil. And it's not like, like a stimulant where he's like all wired or anything, because Yohan's just not he is, when he wakes up, he's all energetic, then he has a lull, and then he's all energetic. But but it helped him get him through the day, right? This Nuvigil.
Yeah. It was actually originally Provigil, and then they came out with a new one called Nuvigil, and then we went with that one because that one worked a lot better. And it helps me kind of get through, till the afternoon, and then I'm fine after that normally. Anyways, but it's something to just keep my mind focused and things along those lines.
Yeah. So, Yohan, a question I have is just thinking here, and you'll be very proud of this. So, one, as you're talking, I'm thinking about you're a very intelligent individual. You smile all the time. You're positive, and it makes me reflect back and just really go deep here if you can for our listeners. Did you have and can recall any really bad days where you're like, God, I just wish I didn't have this CMT and I'm so frustrated, or any of those days where you were down in the dumps, and how did you carry on? Anyone who doesn't know you, who got to know you now, given your positivity, I think people would say, hey, did he have any challenges? He's just so confident.
I had a lot of hard times when I was younger, especially before I really could get a better grasp on my mentality and be as positive as you say I always am. And even these days, every once in a while, you're just you get kind of low, right? You're like, this is such a pain in the butt. But yeah, I definitely had some hard times when I was younger. The bullying incident, when it first happened, was really tough. Or in high school, when I was thinking about wearing braces or the concept of surgery, it was like, wow, I might actually have to do this. This is kind of crazy that I have to go this far for this stupid disease. That's why it's important to have that close friend group, close family, good connections, because they're there to prop you back up, to give you some feedback, to help you out when you're in that low, so that you're not alone with that. You're not dealing with it on your own, because especially when you're younger, it's hard to internalize and think about and contemplate on life when you're 12, right? I mean, that's not something you do. You don't think of these big issues when you're younger. So that's kind of why my parents and my friends and all my family were so important to me throughout my life, because they kind of helped build that support and build that confidence to be okay talking about this and keep going forward.
That's excellent. And Lizzo, being a parent, again, let your guard down a little bit. But I'm sure you had challenging days, just in terms of support for Yohan, and probably episodes of, I know you say you don't cry, but I'm sure that you have cried in the past. How do you carry on?
It's tough. Yohan has actually taught me a lot about living in the moment. And he has a really good attitude because he's like, why should I worry about that, about tomorrow? I just got to live today. And I'm a catastrophizer. I'm like, and this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, and this is going to happen, So he helps me bring me back into the moment. But it is tough. I don't like this disease. And I have a lot of friends with this disease. And it's progressive. And people have breathing issues. And Yohan, he minimizes it. But those foot surgeries he had, they were very, very challenging, extremely challenging, and so challenging that I didn't know if I could do it anymore. You have these times you're like, I got to get up in the middle of the night and he's in pain and what, like we got to find a cure for this. And I think that's where you and I have so much energy around the cycle for CMT. But going back to Yohan, he does have a great attitude because he didn't mention he had back problems. And then this one doctor goes, oh, he has pectus carinatum, which he's grown out of.
What?
But yeah, that was like so insensitive when that. Do you remember, Yohan, when they said pectus carinatum?
Pactus carinatum?
Yeah.
It's Latin.
It's an annoying thing where like my sternum pops out or something whenever I raise my right arm.
Oh, okay. Enough. I'm getting nauseous here.
Yeah, but what did the doctor say? What did the doctor say to you?
He called it like pigeon breast or something like that. I was like, oh, that's great. I'm going to go tell all my friends I have pigeon breast. That's what I want to know.
I'm just keep it in
really
the
helps me fit in.
So something that you both commented on is tell us a little bit about the surgery. Why did you have surgery? What was the reason behind that? What was the outcome? Was it painful?
Are you going to have another one?
Yeah. What's the deal?
Surgery. So surgery is a big topic in CMT. And I personally wanted to avoid surgery if at all possible because you don't want surgery if you don't need it. So that's why I was always into PT. But there was a point where we decided when I was, how old was I now? 22, 23. Something had to be done. My foot had some deformities in it that I was rolling out. I was at high risk for spraining my ankle. My toes were pretty curled. My hammer
pigeon
toe.
Breast?
My hammer toe. Sorry, you got me all triggered by that. My hammer toe was really causing me issues with finding shoes and things on those lines. And so we went and saw a doctor in Wayne State, Dr. Glenn Pfeffer. Very good guy. I like him a lot. He at first was like, I don't think you need it right away. You could wait a couple of years, but at some point you're going to have this ridiculously long named surgery that I don't remember anymore on your foot. So we decided during 1 year after I finished college in 2017, that's when it was, that I should have this foot reconstructive surgery. It sounded like a pretty good idea, and it was a good idea long term.
Right. So you were balancing between the surgery, and I know you got your master's, right? So you had to put academics on pause, right?
Exactly. I had just finished college, and I said, there's no other time except for now that I'll have like 6 to 8 months to do this, because the healing process is pretty long when you have 3 procedures done to your foot all at once. It takes a while. We went and we had the surgery done. It was just 7-hour surgery, which was really long. Well, I was out, like completely out in many ways. And then we drove from LA. We were in LA for the surgery, and I had flown down there for the surgery. And then we drove my dad, I think, drove me back to Los Altos, where we live now, with my foot elevated in the back, completely wasted on pain meds. So I don't remember it very well, but I do remember that the first night after the surgery, I was in incredible pain. Like I felt, because they had given me a nerve block right before the surgery so that I would feel nothing below my knee for 12 hours. And then I get home and that wore off right before we started all this pain medication regimen. So I just got blasted with the full pain of my foot literally being sliced open. So that was fun. No, that was not fun. Other than that one incident, the surgery, overall, the recovery was okay, but it was painful. It was tough. It's 6 to 8 months where you can't move your foot.
So what couldn't you do before the surgery, and what can you do now as a result of having the surgery?
Well, I guess one of the biggest thing is I couldn't really lift my foot past 90 degrees.
So foot drop.
Foot drop was a big issue, and that isn't an issue anymore on my left foot. That's the greatest outcome from this, is the fact that tripping is impossible almost with my left foot unless I'm
that's
trying.
Awesome. Yeah.
But with every pro, there's cons, and the issue is that although the first surgery, I had to have it redone because they had overcorrected my foot and I was having other issues. So I had to have it done a second time on the same foot. So my left foot has been through a big ordeal, and I decided that after all this, I don't think I want my right foot ever touched with surgery unless it's going to fall off or something. Because one, I don't have 11 months to deal with this anymore. And thankfully, my left foot was far more seriously affected than my right. So it was good to get it done on my left foot.
And is that common, Yohan, where maybe they overcorrect and they have to do surgery a second time? Is it just kind of...
No, apparently that was the first time that ever happened to this person.
Really?
It was the weirdest thing. And although they had made a mistake, I did appreciate that he took almost 2 months to figure out the issue and make sure that it didn't happen when they fixed it. But still, that wasn't fun having to do that all over again. But this time, at least we're on top of the pain meds and I was okay and everything went a lot more smoothly than the first surgery. And it gave me.
And you made out pretty well with that lawsuit. You got like $10 million, right?
If only. That would have been sweet.
And whoever that doctor was, if you are listening, we're just joking. Yohan gave you a lot of positive feedback there.
I was trying to spin that positively, but you then went down into the south. But
I have to say, though, a lot of people that have foot surgeries, even though it works the first time, it's a progressive disease. So if you correct hammer toes and it may just go back the way it was before, you might have other problems or need surgery down the road. So Yohan had a second surgery and they did it a little bit differently. But CMT foot is complicated. And sometimes you can correct somebody and it works great. You can overcorrect somebody and it works great, or it doesn't work so great.
Well, Yohan, I'm thinking here as we're closing out the end of this podcast, one thing I think is really important, again, just reflecting back on your stories and more importantly, our audience and our listeners. And this opportunity, what would you like to say to our listeners in terms of encouragement and or how you manage through these symptoms? What have you learned from this and what can you share for someone who may just have received a diagnosis and or someone going into surgery? And maybe we go more to someone who's just learning they have CMT. What type of advice or encouragement would you give them as a result of your experiences?
One important thing is always to find some people that you can lean on to talk to be able to discuss this about. So, I mean, I don't know what type of CMT you may be diagnosed with. I don't know how severely you're affected, but I think this is true for all people who are diagnosed with CMT. It's important to have people to be able to talk to discuss this, to be able to rely on, to confide into. The CMT isn't like, oh, I can deal with this on my own type thing. I feel it's something that you need to have a group of people that can help you out, not necessarily help, but like that you can talk to about any problems you run into, that can give you advice on how to deal with things. Try to understand ways of helping you in ways that you want help in, and not misunderstanding, that, you have CMT, but you can still do things. It's not like you're completely disabled and can't do anything. I mean, there's always some activities that you can participate in. And it's finding those activities that's so important, and finding that group of people that you can talk to and work with.
That's awesome. I'm going to transition over to Lizzo. Lizzo, as a parent, advice for parents who are now experiencing either CMT themselves and or have a child with CMT. What advice would you give them?
My advice would be to stay positive and to talk about CMT. Talk about CMT to your kids. Normalize it, because a lot of parents feel very guilty to have given the CMT gene to one of their kids. Luckily, we didn't have that because Yohan's a spontaneous mutation. And I think about it this way. We all give certain traits, and genetically we give things to our kids that we don't even know about. It could be risk for cancer or heart disease or high cholesterol or anxiety. So we all have things that we give to our kids. And if the child has CMT, well, okay, you can't go back. You can't change it. So take it as it is. Talk about it. Acceptance is huge. I think parents role model behavior. And if the children feel that the parents are really anxious, the parent hates living with CMT and is very negative, then they're going to emulate that kind of attitude and behavior. It's not great. It's not a great disease to have. But again, we can't change it. We're working on a cure. Get involved. Get involved with the CMTA. Get involved with your kids. Be an advocate for people with CMT and meet others. When we have a great camp for kids and great support groups around the country. So I would really say there's a lot of people that kind of want to hide the fact that they have CMT or the kids have CMT. And our philosophy has always been, do what you can now. We did a lot of traveling when Yohan was younger because we didn't know what the effects of CMT were going to be. And I'm really glad we did that. And we talked about it and accepted it. And look at you. You're involved too, Chris. I mean, how have you seen Yohan's evolution over the years?
How have I seen his evolution?
Yeah.
Oh boy, now a question that I need to answer. No, I think as I stated, he's, again, a very confident individual. I think he's very realistic. I love the fact that his positive attitude, he's getting out there and biking and looking at ways that he can continue to do things. And his involvement with the CMTA and sharing his stories with others is just remarkable. So it's encouraging. I hope it's really encouraging for our listeners. I was just thinking in closing, and I can tell we need to wrap up because Yohan's kind of yawning and ready to go to sleep again. What's that?
New vigil. Did you take it yet?
She should have taken that new vigil or something. But
Very funny. Very funny.
I need one at this point.
Right. So, Yohan, that was fantastic. And I heard something about a birth certificate. Do you not have one?
I definitely do. I can show it to you. It's just not from...
So you're both French and U.S. citizen?
Yes, I'm dual citizen.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow. Can you close our podcast with a little French for our listeners?
Non, d'accord, ça va. Ben, merci, j'aime être ici. C'est pas mal.
Oui, merci beaucoup, Yohan. C'était très sympa
Oui,
que
très
tu nous
sympa.
parles.
Okay, folks, that's about it. I have no idea what they're saying. Even though my last name is Willette and I'm French Canadian, I really did not understand that. That might be a great opportunity to close. Lizzo and Yohan, that was awesome. Way to go. And folks and our listeners, Lizzo and Chris will be coming back at you in the future with another fantastic interview and more information on CMT. Lizzo, you got anything else to say?
Yeah, who's our next guest?
Can't tell you. Can't
Keep
tell
doing
you.
this. Who is it?
Nope. You'll find out. Tune in, folks.
Hey, it's
Tune
been
in.
real. Thank you so much.
Adios.
Au revoir.